Imagine never smelling rain, never smelling your mother's cooking, never smelling the person you love, never knowing what coffee actually smells like. Only that other people seem to feel something when they walk past a cafe that you have never once felt. This is not hypothetical. Roughly 1 in 10,000 people are born this way, a condition called congenital anosmia, the complete absence of smell from the moment of birth. And the strangest part isn't what they're missing. It's that most of them don't realize anything is missing at all until years into their lives. Here is something almost impossible to comprehend. Children born with congenital anosmia typically don't know they have it, not because they're hiding it, because there's no way for them to know. You can only recognize the absence of something if you have a reference point for its presence. And someone who has never smelled anything in their life has no internal comparison to draw from. They don't experience the world as missing a sense. They simply experience the world as it is for them, complete, whole, the only version they have ever known. It's usually not until school, when other children make comments about food at lunch or react to something in the room that the anosmic child doesn't react to at all, that the realization begins to form. And even then, it can take years. Some people don't receive an accurate diagnosis until well into adulthood, sometimes after more than 6 years of seeing different doctors, because so few medical professionals are trained to recognize it. Their parents are often the ones most shocked. Comments report children casually mentioning at age 7 or 8 or older that they've never been able to smell anything, to parents who had simply never thought to ask. The cause of congenital anosmia lies in a structure most people have never heard of, the olfactory bulb. This is the part of the brain responsible for receiving and processing smell signals from the nose. In people with congenital anosmia, brain imaging often shows that these structures are either absent or severely underdeveloped. The olfactory receptors in the nose may be functioning, but there's nothing on the other end to receive and interpret the signal. It's like a phone line that connects to nowhere. In some cases, this occurs in isolation. No other symptoms, no other developmental differences, just the absence of smell. In other cases, it's connected to a broader genetic condition. Kallmann syndrome, a rare hormonal disorder that affects puberty and reproductive development, is one of the most well-documented examples. Roughly half of all cases of this broader hormonal condition include anosmia as a defining feature. Researchers have identified specific genetic mutations involved in some cases, genes responsible for the early development of the olfactory system before birth. But in the majority of isolated cases, the precise genetic cause remains unknown. In 2024, researchers published a study that revealed something nobody had specifically looked for before. People with congenital anosmia breathe differently, not dramatically, not in a way you'd notice without precise instrumentation, but measurably, consistently, throughout both waking hours and sleep. The researchers used a wearable device capable of tracking nasal airflow with extreme precision over a full 24-hour period. What they found was a significant reduction in something called respiratory peaks, the short, unconscious sniffs that most people make constantly throughout the day without ever noticing. These tiny sniffs are not random. They are exploratory behavior. Your brain, equipped with a functioning olfactory system, continuously samples the air around you, checking, monitoring, gathering information through small bursts of inhalation. In people without a sense of smell, the brain doesn't initiate this behavior in the same way. There's no reason to sniff if there's nothing to detect. This finding matters beyond curiosity. Researchers believe that altered breathing patterns may help explain why people with anosmia report broader health and quality of life impacts than the simple absence of smell would suggest on its own. The nose, it turns out, does more than smell, and losing one function can quietly affect another. The practical risks are real and significant. People with anosmia cannot detect smoke, cannot detect gas leaks, cannot tell if food has spoiled. These are not small things. They require constant compensating habits, checking expiration dates obsessively, installing extra smoke detectors, relying on others to flag dangers that most people would catch instinctively through scent. But the deeper loss is harder to quantify. Smell is one of the only senses with a direct pathway to the limbic system, the brain's center for emotion and memory. For most people, the smell of rain, the smell of a childhood home, the smell of a person they love, these carry emotional weight that arrives faster than thought. For someone with congenital anosmia, that entire channel of experience simply doesn't exist. Not painfully absent, because you cannot miss what you've never had access to, but absent in a way that means an entire category of human connection to the world is permanently closed to them. Interestingly, researchers note that despite this, people with congenital anosmia rarely report significant problems with appetite or nutrition. Unlike people who lose their sense of smell later in life and often struggle with food becoming less appealing, those born without it never developed an emotional relationship between smell and eating in the first place. You cannot grieve a connection you never knew was possible. There is something quietly profound in thinking about a life lived entirely without scent, a world of food without aroma, of rain without that specific electric smell beforehand, of people without the chemical signature that the rest of us absorb without realizing every time we stand close to someone we love. And yet, people with congenital anosmia build full, complete lives. They form relationships. They raise families. They experience love and joy and grief through every other channel available to them. What their experience reveals is something the rest of us rarely consider, that an entire dimension of human experience can be completely absent, and a person can still live a whole, meaningful life, which raises an uncomfortable question for everyone who does have this sense and spends most of their day not paying attention to it at all. If someone can live fully without it, what exactly are the rest of us doing when we have it and ignore it anyway? If the science of smell, what it gives us and what it means to live without it, is something you want to keep exploring, subscribe to Invisible Sense, a new story every week.